Welcome everyone to Get Free Friday with Louisville Community Bail Fund. I am Rebecca Frederick. I work with the Louisville Community Bail Fund doing data and the Court Watch team, which is what we're here to talk about today. And I'm going to let Caitlin introduce themselves.
Hey everybody, I'm Caitlin. I started working with the LCBF Court Watch team, I guess, in like November. So it's a really awesome project. It's super important. And so I hope that we're able to explain some things to you all and get some of you on board today.
Awesome. So we, Louisville Community Bail Fund as a team, we go live every other Friday and hit a topic about abolition. And this week we're going to talk about Court Watch and what our Court Watch team is doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. We started this Court Watch team pretty much around November, so Caitlin's been around since the beginning. And we started this to do a few things, which I think Caitlin's going to explain in a minute. But really, we just saw a need for folks to have support in the courtroom, to have support in understanding court, and to do some electoral work as we face down the 2022 election. As Trump is gone now, we have to sort of do some cleanup, and part of that cleanup is in the judge arena. So I think I'm going to kick it over to Caitlin and jump into sort of what we're even doing here in the Court Watch world.
Yeah, so I mean, there are a number of reasons why we Court Watch, and I think, I love that we have so many different reasons because I think if any of these reasons speak to you, like we want you to do this because I think they're so important and they're so it's such a multifaceted project and it speaks to so many different aspects of who people are. So one of the main reasons that we Court Watch is so that we can figure out what kind of support mechanisms our community members need. And so if someone is in court and they're granted bail, but they need to also find placement at a secure treatment facility, and maybe they don't know how to do that because it's really hard to do, we can figure out how to put them in touch with those resources. Or if they just need help getting transported back and forth between court hearings if they're in person, right? Like we can figure out what our comrades need and we can help put them in touch with those resources. And so that's one of the main reasons why we Court Watch. The second reason why we Court Watch is also to promote a sense of accountability amongst all court actors, right? Not just prosecutors and not just the judges, but also defense attorneys and everyone who's in there. There is a lot of power in knowing that you're being watched. There are a lot of organizations that are involved in cop watching, and we've seen a lot of that come out, especially this summer with people just kind of recording the police. And so we are embodying a similar thing just to kind of say, hey, like we are here to support our community members and we've got an eye on you. And it's not, I think it's a really positive thing, just to kind of keep people in line. And also to let the people who are appearing in court know that there are people who have their backs. So that accountability and that support is really fundamental to what we're doing. But then I think there's also an even broader reason why we do this, and that's just so we can also learn about the court system overall. I have a PhD in criminology, and I don't necessarily understand how the court system works. I don't know the day-to-day knowledge. I don't know the day-to-day terms. I don't know the process. And even just doing this since November, I've learned so much about how court works, both formally and informally. And so if we want to be knowledgeable citizens, we want to know how these structures work, court watching is just a great way to do that. You listen to the judges speak, you listen to the back and forth they have with all of the attorneys, you hear the voices of those who are appearing in court, and you just really get to know how the system works. And whether that confirms some of your understandings of the court system or whether it contradicts some of the things you've learned, it's either way, it's this very liberatory process, I think. And so that is something that we really aim to do, to allow us to be more knowledgeable, especially because some of the judges that we're paying particular attention to are coming up for re-election in 2022. And It's a really interesting thing that sometimes I think we forget that judges in this capacity get elected. And, because we tend to be focused on like national elections or even like state representatives. And so we are able to pay attention to what's going on in the courtroom because these judges are coming up for reelection and we want to know what they're about. And Court Watch is one of the greatest ways to get to know that and then to share that with other people who are voting because we know how important it is to vote, and we know what kind of transformative potential that has. And so if you want to make an informed decision, listen to court.
Absolutely. I love all of that. I want to lift up and just make sure everyone heard you say several of these things. One is that oftentimes judges forget that they're elected. Not just that we forget that they are elected, they forget they are elected. And when we show up just to say, hey, I just want to see what you're doing. I don't really care what you do, although we do care, but, let's just see what you do. That puts them on edge. And we have seen that. We've done a little bit of group watching where we show up sort of, 8 deep. And that has allowed us to really kind of put that judge on edge and sort of see that they can be rattled and see that our presence really does make an impact and that our presence really is at least seen, right? Like they know we're there. And then that sharing this out to our communities, especially for white folks, we often, because we enter these systems differently and we go through these systems differently, we don't understand their impact on the day-to-day life of Black and brown folks in this country. And when we start to really pay attention to these systems, we start to understand and see these things. We need to be taking that back out to our communities. And this is a way to really do that. It's a way to say, hey, I was watching court the other day and this happened and I can't believe it and it's wild, and starts conversations in our own community around our own community members and around what's happening in our own in where we are now, and like where we actually live. So I think those are really important pieces. So recently we made a website that I'm gonna share with you all now. We're very excited about it, and it's really streamlined our process of how we court watch. So you all can do it, any day of the week that that these judges have court. Which we should talk about who we're watching actually. Which judges we're watching? Judge Eckerly, Honorable Judge Eckerly, and court in Division 7, Judge Chauvin in Division 8, and Judge McDonald in Division 9. And those 3 courtrooms have been identified by folks in our network as people who are making some questionable decisions on the bench, and that maybe we might be interested in what they have to say. So we're watching those. We also watch specific cases for community members that are in our network, and those are on a calendar that I'll show y'all on our website. And we also watch protest cases because we find that sometimes protest cases are heard and they go through the system very differently than a non-protest case, and we want to track that and we want to understand what's happening in our community and what's happening with our people on the front line, and how the system is manipulating the movements that we're building. So I'm going to share with everybody this website and show you all some, if I can figure it out on this system. Okay, Caitlin, you let me know if it is not working. But this is our website, and it is, I will drop the link for it in a comment here once I'm done sharing my screen. We open up here on our first page, which just sort of has a little blurb about who we are, and then it has places to go. So to learn about what we're doing and how we're go to the action. This legal one. So this system, the criminal justice system, the court system, the legal system, the jail system, they are systems of white supremacy that are built to oppress Black folks and brown folks and indigenous folks. And they're also built to be very complicated. And they're built so that we us lay folk don't understand it. So we want to try to help bridge that gap and understand it. And like, because I didn't, like Caitlin, I also didn't really understand a lot until I started watching court and I started diving into cases and seeing what's happening, and really understanding that it's just to created to make hardship in people's lives. And when we can understand the system, we can help to intercept those hardships. And that is sort of what we've done in some of these sections. So the Legal System 101 section um, covers sort of some of what um, who the players are, what types of cases you might be hearing, and then what different common terms you might hear and sort of that jargon. So you can find all that right here. And we also have a community court support page. And this community court support page is built to connect our community members with resources that will help you find what date your court is, or what the call-in number is, or sort of what are the rules of remote court. You can fill out our court support form, which will which will connect you to our Louisville Community Bail Fund support team, and we can help if you need internet connection or a phone connection or a ride, or we can, we can't guarantee to help with a lawyer, but we can try to connect you with legal support. Those types of things, you would fill out this form, and then you can find sort of what are the things you would need. We'll be adding to this page as time goes to keep opening up these resources and making sure that our people have them. We also have the section down here for the protest court support, which has a form that we'll talk about. So then we get into sort of what actually the court watch process is. And court is completely open, so we're all legally allowed to be in these courtrooms, and everything that you're gathering is record. So none of what we're doing is, this is a pretty, as they would say, green level action, right? It's very safe. So you are going to download the docket and find right here, you'll find what times there's court, and you can find times that work for you um, based on your schedule. If you wanted to watch our specific court cases that we're tracking, you can click on our calendar either right up here or right here, and that'll take you to our Google Calendar, which will have all of those laid out for you. And let me show you what the court docket is. Kind of confusing, so let's all just take a look at it. Makes sense to me, so I assume it doesn't for everyone, for others. But here you put in our county, which is Jefferson. And then you'll pick your circuit or district. We're watching circuit courts, so let's see what's on our docket for court. And then you can click on our courtroom. And 8 is one that we're watching. So then it would bring us up to it will bring us up to the docket here, which tells us what cases are being heard, what their case numbers are, what times they're being heard. So you would go through this and find what would work for you in your schedule, and just start watching court. And then as you're watching it, you'll call in, because everything right now is remote. So you'll call in. We have these numbers here, and then if you need further numbers, they're also listed in here. And then we've got some tips, and we've got this great worksheet for you, so you know what you're watching for. And you're just going to fill out this court watch observation form. If you watch a protest, you'll fill out the protest court observation form. And then that way we have sort of all the data that we're collecting in one place, and it's all uniform. I'm going to show you what our court watch worksheet looks like, so you see what that is, and shows sort of what we're looking for or watching. Which, Caitlin, if you add a little bit. Sorry, it was insane. Well, anyways, we can just talk about what we court.
Ooh,
There we go.
okay. I think everything's back. I was like, wait, everything froze. Yeah, so do you want me to talk about
Okay.
kind of what we're looking for? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that would be great.
Oh, perfect. Okay. All right, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, when we're watching court, we do have specific things that we want to know. Like, we want to know the case number. We want to know, the major players. We want to know what kind of hearing it is, if it's a pretrial conference or if it's a probation revocation hearing. And we have all of that laid out in the little template or the little worksheet. Um, but in kind of broad strokes, we want to know what happens. We want to know the specific outcome. Like if it was a probation revocation hearing, we want to know if probation was revoked, or if it was a hearing to set bail, we want to know if bail was set and what that was set at. If there are specific restrictions that are put on the person who's been, caught up in this system, what are those restrictions? Are they not allowed to go to certain places? Are they not allowed to take out their trash? What are these things? Because we kind of want to know what potential challenges they might face. Um, but we also want to know your kind of subjective interpretation of what's going on. And I think this can sometimes be the hardest thing because we are taught that court and the criminal justice system or the criminal injustice system is a very objective, non-biased, equal justice for all, color blind, class blind, gender blind, sexuality blind, right? Like that it's this neutral system. What not only personal experience from so many people, but also scientific research has found is that that's not the case. And one of the places in which we often see this bias and this inequality come out is in the courtroom, and it's with sentencing decisions and revocation hearings and plea bargains, especially, right? And setting bond. And so we want to know what's going on to really expose the fact that this isn't a neutral process. At every point in this system, someone is making a subjective determination. Someone is making a subjective determination whether to arrest someone or to let them go. Someone is making a determination whether to put them on home incarceration or to incarcerate them, or to allow them, to do this or that, or to give them treatment instead of putting them in jail. Someone's making that decision at every step in this process. Just like in the beginning of the process, someone makes a decision to pass a law, or a lot of people make decisions to pass laws. And so anytime people are involved in this system, someone's opinion, someone's biases, someone's subjective interpretations are being imbued within this system. And that is something that I think we're very uncomfortable with admitting, because it goes against what we've been taught. But that's the reality. And so when you're court watching, we want to know what kind of vibe you were getting from what was happening, right? Like, what did kind of the judge say? What was taking place off the record, right? Because since everything's telephonic, the judge can go off the record. You're still going to hear it. But what did the judge say if they went off the record, right? And like, what's going on? What was the outcome of this? What was the reasoning for this? I know, like, I've watched court, and there have often been experiences where judges have called on this morality argument of like, you're a bad person and you are a threat to this community because of X, Y, and Z. And so I'm going to do this to you. Or I am the defender of the law. I am the defender of what is good. And you violated that. And so I need to punish you. Like that kind of rhetoric. And that stuff's really powerful because these are also people's lives that we're talking about. And whether, the outcome makes sense or not, like those are the spaces in which we see subjective determinations coming through. And so we want to know about it, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. We just want to know that that's what's happening, because the idea that the criminal and justice system is a system of neutrality is a myth, and we need to work on busting that. So, that's my kind of my on my high horse, but that's I think that's important. And so we want to know what you noticed and um where that argument was coming from and what the justifications were. And most of the time, like, I know, like, when I watch court, most of the time it's just a very straightforward thing, and it's there's nothing really to note. But sometimes there's a lot to note, and it's really a space for reflection, I think. So we also want that. We want the very tangible logistical outcomes, but we also want to know, as a court watcher, how you felt about that outcome.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think to tie that into part of this is that electoral work, and that judges don't campaign in the same way that other politicians campaign. So we don't really get to know who they are, right? Like, we get a really basic, oh, there you have this many kids and they've been married this many years and they have this as their resume, and that's sort of it. But when we can start really building out what people are noticing in court, then we can start to have a better picture about who they are. So yeah. So we have Ebony, who I'm going to pop into the screen with us. Ebony is a community member of LCBF who has also been answering the hotline a lot lately, and is currently going through that awful criminal justice system that we are here to abolish. And I would love to hear, some of what we notice in Court Watch, and then also what we know from the hotline and what we know from community members, is that court takes absolutely forever to get through the system, that it is very inconvenient, and that when you are actually incarcerated, sometimes they don't even take you to court, or with COVID, they have been using COVID as an excuse of, well, you're in a positive dorm, so we can't take you, but then they're also not quarantining and things like that in the jail, so then people get stuck in the cycle of missing court dates, and at some point it becomes not a speedy trial when you get years into a court case. So I don't know if you want to do you want to jump in and you want to chat about maybe your experiences in court and what you got.
Yes. Well, recently, they want me to plea. It's like they not trying to hear anything I have to say. Well, I need you to just come to the pub, sign this paper. I'm not doing it. I'm going to trial. And I don't know. I had court yesterday, but it was like tough for me to get in the system. My original public defender, she's on maternity leave. She's awesome. So they done gave me someone new, and I don't know too much about him. And I really, honestly, no disrespect, but how he's working, I don't like it. So, um, yeah, that needs to something needs to be done about that. Don't force me to sign something. Don't. It's not cool, especially
Yeah,
when I know I'm not gonna say that I done something I know I didn't do. I'm not about to do it.
yeah,
Uh,
and they do
recently,
definitely try to force you to do that, to sign, right? Like, that's a thing they want to get. They structure this to where you get stuck, and it becomes so inconvenient to your life, and it becomes so, like, you either get stuck incarcerated or get stuck out in the real world, and it's still inconvenient, and they built it that way to make you take that plea, and that plea doesn't ever benefit you. It benefits the state, and it always does. And so that's a very real experience. I'm
uh,
sorry.
I recently had someone call me and tell me that like they have been pushed back. Period. Like, there's no court. If they do go to court, it just gets postponed. Like, just sit there and wait a little bit longer. Just sit there. They don't have anything. And I'm gonna say this about public defenders: they get a salary, and they really don't know who these people are. Like, if they really, my new, the one who went on maternity leave, she actually like looked into me, figured out who I was, talked to my family. She cared. She's for the people. I'm gonna say this: if you're not for the people, don't act like you're for the people, because we're looking for you to help us. We're looking. We need you. We don't have people out there. So we're looking for you to help us. So we don't need you to be flogging just for a check, rush us on so you can, do what you have to do. Like, literally, like, take care of us because we looking for you. He's Someone called me not too long ago on the jail line, the hotline, and they was telling me that like everything is just a rush process. And it's not fair to them, especially people who like their whole lives. It's like they had whole lives out there, just a minor uh traffic stop or something and they didn't know they had a warrant. And now they're sitting and they got families and kids out there. That's not fair. It's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also like one of the big myths too is that this is a well-oiled machine, right? That this system moves quickly and effectively, and that's why we have it. And I know um, I was watching court in January, and someone was there, and like there was a mess up on the paperwork, and there was like a miscommunication between probation and parole, and this ended up getting sentencing, and they were supposed to be there for sentencing, and sentencing ended up getting rescheduled until March simply because there was no time until then. And so this person has to sit in jail until March because this is a messy, messy, messy system that doesn't keep people like it doesn't it doesn't promote safety at all, but also does not run very well, and to the point where it actually causes further harm to the people who are wrapped up in the system.
Um, the lady, it was they it's negligent. They don't pay attention to none of the news stories. The people who work for Louisville Metro Department of Corrections, they don't watch. I guess they don't watch the news. There's been multiple situations where people's safety have been jeopardized in those places because they're trying to move people or putting pregnant women in pregnant women in solitary to be away from the regular dorm, but you put the people who have COVID in solitary. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like a death wish. This does not make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we see with Court Watch. You know, even if we're watching something and like things are relatively straightforward and things move on, like the things that always stand out to me are the instances in which like people's humanity are just not like that's just not even recognized. Like the fact that like the people who are caught up in the system like are people, and it's so much so to the point where like I mean I know you were talking about like being pressured to take a plea, and I think it's like less than 5% of cases actually go to trial because people are pressured so much to take a plea. Because and like this is something I always have to kind of tell people that aren't familiar with the system and also don't have any personal experience in it too, is like when push comes to shove, if you are presented with the option to take a plea, maybe for a lesser charge, and not spend the rest of the time in jail waiting for your trial, right? Because if you're also in the position where you can't get out on bond, and so it's like, okay, I'm either going to sit in jail while I'm waiting for my trial, or am I just going to take a plea and get out so I can go back to work, I can get back to my kids and get back to these things? Like, that's not really a choice. Like, it's not like, oh, we've just gifted you this option, right? It's like, no, you're choosing between these two terrible things. And so sometimes, and like, there is also like scientific evidence of this stuff happening and people being pressured to take pleas because the other option is so terrible and this is just the lesser of two evils, and people plead out and they admit guilt when they're not even guilty because the other option is so terrible. And so it's like, yeah, like we just want to believe that this system is here to promote safety and justice, and it's just not. And I think when people court watch, like those of us who haven't had direct interaction with the system court watch, I think that that's something that people at least become aware of relatively quickly. Like, this is not this fantastic, system. It's a hot mess, and it's a hot mess that's also costing people their lives. So it's not even like something fun to watch. It's not like watching reality TV where you're like, oh, this is funny. I'm sitting here eating my popcorn and like enjoy a hot mess express. No, it's like people are dying and losing their liberty because of this mess.
Absolutely. Thank you all. That is some powerful stuff right there. And just the reminder that when we engage in support or in tearing down, or in whatever way we engage within the community, the criminal justice system, that it is impacting daily lives, and it's impacting people that we don't see, and it's impacting in ways that we don't see, um, and 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 it is a matter of, when we want to create a world that's centered around dignity and humanity and justice, this system's not going to be part of it. And how do we work within that? And how do we bring that to light? And how do we show our comrades that this is something that we need to be part of? So it's awesome. We have some trainings coming up that I want to toss out there. On Sunday, February 28th from 2 to 3:30. We'll do a Zoom training, as well as Monday, March 8th from 7 to 8:30. We're also going to do a Zoom training, and we'll get some graphics out on the LCBF page, so make sure you check that out. What we'll go over in those sessions is how to court watch, how to actually call in, what it will actually look like. We'll go over some of that legal 101 stuff. We'll answer everybody's questions. We will learn it together, because that's the only way we're going to learn it. And I want to touch on, Ebony brought up answering the hotline, and our LCBF hotline right now, we're getting a lot of calls from inside the jail, because there is lots of COVID going on in the jails. There is lots of moving incarcerated community members from dorm to dorm, creating very unsanitary, very unsafe environments, a lot of overcrowding going on. So we're getting a lot of calls about and fighting. Oh, here, you can jump on it. Tell them here, and I want folks to know we need some help answering our hotline. So
Yes, there's been a lot of violence going on because people are getting moved, people are getting picked on, and it's causing a lot of trouble. Uh, they need to have not tested in 4 months. Like, they need to test, coughing, they need a mask, and if they don't, he said he hasn't. Okay, I understand y'all don't want alcohol. Okay, that's understandable, but bleach. They said they haven't even had bleach in 4 months. Like, come on now, some stuff just gotta give. You have to do something. Like, something's wrong, but it's causing violence in there also. Like, I just got off the phone with someone. They're passing the phones around telling their stories and stuff. And I'm documenting everything. It's scary.
it's very scary, and it's been brewing for months at this point, and that's sort of where part of the root of that violence is, that these issues have been carrying on for so long, and there have been no steps to address it. The governor is not addressing it. The jail is not addressing it. And we saw what happened in St. Louis with the incarcerated community member protests, where they broke out the windows and they set the fires, and they did that because of COVID in the jail, and they did that because their conditions are so horrible that we have community members sometimes that call us and they say, I committed this crime, this incident is true, but what I committed should not be a death sentence, and being in this jail right now is a death sentence. And that really, those are our community members. Those are our people that live next door to us, that live down the street from us. Those are our people. And we are allowing them, well, but they are being allowed to live in an environment that is that terrifying for nothing, for a bag of pot, or like you mentioned earlier, like not having insurance. I see that charge so much, it hurts my brain. But not having car insurance, or not having a license, like things that are state regulated, just created out of nowhere. Like, why do we have to have insurance? Why do we have a license? Like, why is that I don't have these pieces of paper, I'm in jail with COVID, right? Like, there's these realities that's happening that are very, very hard very hard to know that are happening and not do anything. So if folks want to help us answer our hotline, take those stories. We do take like a survey and we get all that information so that we have it if we want to, so we're able to share it out, and tell those folks stories, because there are also stories that don't get told. The media is not being allowed in right now. There's just a lot happening that's not being shared. So if you're ready and willing and able to help with that, hit us up. I'm going to put, if I can find the link, I'm going to put a link for y'all to sign up to volunteer with LCBF. Here we go. You can also call our hotline or text our hotline and get signed, get connected that way. And just, give us an hour a week, a couple hours a week, something, whatever you got. And then also we got some data work. So if you got that kind of skills, we'll take those as well. Did you all have anything else you wanted to toss out there about Court Watch or just the court sort of system? One day we were watching with a group of white elders, and it's their first time, and they noticed that one of the gentlemen this case had been going on since like 2016. It's been like years, and they were just absolutely shocked by that. So, if you want to come in and learn those things, sign up with us. And I don't know if y'all have something else you want to put out there.
I would just say, oh, go ahead, Ebony.
Riots in the jail, dumping over ice buckets just to be heard. It's just they just making stuff bigger than what it is and blaming it on the whole jail. Like, and it's just ridiculous. It's one floor in the jail that has women on it, and the men didn't even do anything. But every time they filled up the ice buckets, they would dump them out. They just want to be heard. Like, they ain't even doing anything to the officers or anything. They just want to be heard. But it's still something. And that was all. I just wanted to throw that. I forgot about that part.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's very purposeful that there's a divide between people who are on the inside and people who are on the outside. There's also like it's very purposeful that it's very hard to get information from the inside to the outside. And so I think like that's why like the hotline is super important, because it's very easy to buy into the, I'll be nice and say, misrepresentations that are being cast about like people who are on the inside. And it can be very easy to just be like, oh yeah, like people are just like engaging in riots, and it's like, no, like those are just people inside who are continuously being silenced and are continuously being harmed and are continuously being treated like they are animals and not human beings. And instead of like digging deeper into that. And so I think, yeah, like the hotline is super key to understanding that, and like having a healthy dose of suspicion about the representations that are coming out of people who are on the inside, I think is really important. That's also why I think like with Court Watch, you get that too, because we're continuously being peddled this nonsense. And one session of Court Watch will truly start to dismantle that perception. And I think, yeah, like we have people who do group Court Watch, which I think is really cool. If you don't want to do it on your own, or if you want to have like a debrief session with people to kind of talk about what you saw and kind of process it a little bit, we do that, which I think is really great. The only other thing I would say too is like, however much time you have to give is so appreciated. Like, even if it's just an hour, like there are weeks sometimes where I like Court Watch between classes and I only have an hour and that's all I do. But like sometimes you're going to hear 5 or 6 cases in an hour. You might only hear one, or you're going to hear 5 or 6 depending on what's going on. And like the way that I think people have to think about it, it's like the cases that you're hearing involve people and involve our people and involve community members. And even if you only watch one case, like that's huge, because there could be grave injustices taking place within that case, and we need to be there to bear witness and to actually do something about it. So whatever time people have I don't think you have to feel like, oh, well, I only have an hour, like I'm not going to be any good. I remember I asked Rebecca this. I was like, Rebecca, if I can only do it for an hour a week, is it okay? And she's like, yes, like please, whatever you have to give. I think is really key. So just to kind of dispel that myth that, this is something you have to do like for 95 hours a week. You don't. If you can, oh my God, please, please, please do that. If you have 95 hours a week, that would be great. But if you don't, like you can still get involved.
Okay, I do have a suggestion if we can get a mailing address so that the inmates can write us and tell us exactly how they feel from their point of view. And that's the easiest way they can get imaging kits every week, so they can do that. Send out a letter to us for free. So if we can do that.
Totally. It's a list. And this is a great example, actually, of if there is a white person out there who is listening to this who would like to sponsor a PO box for the LCBF so that we can get letters from incarcerated folks, hit us up, because that is a great way. If you don't even have an hour to give, you could give us an avenue to get stories out. So that's definitely, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. And that gives, it's really important to, people might hear that and say, well, you got the hotline. Why do we need to get letters? But it's important that we allow folks space to use their own words, to tell their own stories, and not allow it to be gatekept, so that I could literally say, this is what they have to say themselves. And it's not through me, it's not filtered by me, but that it is actually what people who are impacted by this system believe and know and feel and understand. And that's all of what LCBF does, that's a big center of it, is how are we lifting up our impacted community members and telling their story, because their stories are lost. Their stories are lost in the court system. Their stories are lost in the jail system. You talked about the subjectiveness of officers during arrest. We've got this LMPD review that I think we'll be going live, a different live, to talk about that. But a huge part of what is being recommended for our officers is a very principle-based decision making, not a decision making that's rooted in trauma-informed care for the community, or that's rooted in what the community wants. It's really rooted in the subjectiveness of what a good officer would do. And if you're a philosophy student, that ain't gonna work out. But it yeah, that subjectiveness is just everywhere, and it starts at that arrest and it goes into that courtroom, and it follows you. It follows you when you go to try to get a job and you've got that felony sitting on your record, or you've got a charge that just kind of, that might be BS charge, but the world really thinks is a yucky charge. Like, I even have stuff like that in my own past, right? Like, we all make mistakes, but this is disproportionately impacting the long-term life of Black bodies in this country. So yeah, think we could all rant about the system forever. So awful. And Ebony, to talk, you mentioned those riots earlier. We have had some, when in the uprisings, in the beginning of the uprisings in the summertime, there were what LMPD or LMDC is qualifying as riots in the male side of the dorm. And we've talked to some of those folks on the phone, and they have really high bonds that are sitting on those riot charges from the inside. So there's like, I think it's like a $75,000 bond and a $50,000 bond for exercising their voice on the inside, right? Like in an environment that is already a hostile, like, it doesn't take much, right? In an environment where you're so heavily oppressed, it does not take much to really spark that. And it's an environment that we create, and it's not safe, and it's not just, as we were talking about earlier. Yeah, here, let me unmute.
Yeah, that buckets of ice, they wasn't, that's crazy. I was there when the riots and stuff started to happen. Like, we were using grape jelly to look out the windows to see what was going on outside. like right across the street is the unemployment office from where my dorm was, and we could see people. Right, then it started to get. That's when they started to get violent. People from out of town was coming in town and started destroying and setting stuff on fire, and stuff like that. And that's what was causing the men to get outright and stuff like that. They wanted like, what's going on here? And then this is what y'all do. They didn't do anything, but every time they filled up the ice bucket, they emptied the ice bucket. They didn't even do anything. Like they just needed. Oh, okay. I don't even want to go.
Yeah, definitely. They used their voice how they could, and the ice bucket's what they had. I mean, I love it personally, but all right. Well, if anybody else doesn't have anything to toss out there, I think we might wrap this up. We got make sure that y'all sign up to, let me get it up on the screen again. Sign up to get our emails about our upcoming trainings, which again are going to be Sunday the 28th from 2 to 3:30, and then Monday March 8th from 7 to 8:30, and that's just for court watch, because we're trying to get lots of folks in these courtrooms to help remind these judges that we are here and that they are elected and that we support our community. Yeah. Anything else, lady? All right. Well, everyone have a wonderful, safe weekend. And if the cops show up at your door, don't talk to them. Yeah. Advice of the century. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.